Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to be guiding you through today's topic because we're going to be diving deep into the actual, real world outcomes of democracy. We spend so much time talking about the ideals, right? But today, we're doing something super practical and honestly incredibly fascinating. We are stepping out of the theoretical textbooks, looking at the hard data, and handing democracy an actual report card. We're going to see how it truly performs when the rubber meets the road.
Okay, so here is our agenda. Just like grading a student at the end of the year, we're going to evaluate democracy across 5 main subjects. First, the democratic dilemma. Then we'll look at governance, economics, social diversity, and finally, dignity and freedom. Let's get right into it. Starting with subject number 1, the democratic dilemma. This is really all about expectations versus reality. To really wrap our heads around this dilemma, we have to ask ourselves kind of a tough question. Do we prefer democracy only for moral reasons? I mean, it's a beautiful concept, right? We all love the idea of equality and freedom. But do we support it just because it sounds great on paper? Or are there hard, prudential, practical reasons to back it up too? Because, when you actually talk to people, an overwhelming majority will choose democracy over a monarchy or a military dictatorship any day. And here's the catch. Many of those exact same people will tell you they aren't entirely satisfied with how their democracy actually works in practice. And honestly, that dissatisfaction, it comes straight from our textbook expectations. We expect democracy to be this magic wand that promotes equality among citizens, enhances individual dignity, improves the quality of our decision-making, resolves our conflicts, and crucially, gives us room to correct our mistakes. But here's the real dilemma. Democracy is often seen as brilliant in principle, but super messy in practice. We kind of fall into the trap of thinking it's going to instantly solve every socioeconomic problem we have. But remember, it's literally just a form of government. It creates the conditions for achieving these things, sure, but the citizens, we're the ones who actually have to step up and take advantage of those conditions. So that brings us to our second subject on the report card, governance. We're looking at accountability and legitimacy here. Let's compare how things actually get done. A very common critique is that democracies are just less efficient than dictatorships. And, well, in a purely mechanical sense, yeah, non-democratic rulers don't have to bother with pesky things like public deliberation, assemblies, or worrying about what the majority thinks. They can just snap their fingers and make rapid-fire decisions. Democracies, on the other hand, rely heavily on negotiation and strict procedures, which inherently slows things down. But, and this is a massive but, we have to think about the cost of that speed. Yes, a dictator can make a fast decision, but what if they make a decision that the public completely rejects? That leads to huge, explosive problems. The cost of time that democracies pay is usually well worth it because the decisions end up being much more acceptable to the people and ultimately way more effective. Now, another huge part of governance is transparency, which is basically the tug-of-war between government secrecy and public knowledge. Think of it like this giant mismatched telescope. On one end, the government is peering through it, magnifying everything to discover all it can about you, the citizen. But then, on the flip side, the public is forced to look through the wrong end of that very same telescope to see what the government is up to. It's completely skewed. While democracies technically ensure that decisions are based on norms and procedures, meaning you have the right to examine the process, the actual track record on sharing that information, it's pretty mixed. Even in established democracies, governments frequently fall way short of total transparency. But wait, despite being slow, sometimes totally inefficient, and struggling with transparency, democracy still overwhelmingly passes the governance test. Why? Because fundamentally, a democratic government is the people's own government. That undeniable legitimacy is absolutely its greatest strength. People fundamentally, deeply wish to be ruled by representatives they actually elected themselves. Democracy's amazing ability to just generate its own support is a huge, undeniable outcome. So for governance, it gets a solid passing grade. All right, brace yourselves for this one. We are moving to our third subject, economics. We're going to look at growth and inequality, and the data might genuinely surprise you. When we look at the historical economic growth data from 1950 to 2000, a really interesting pattern pops out. If we look at all regimes globally, dictatorial governments actually edge out democracies with a slightly higher growth rate, 4.42% compared to 3.95%. But hold on, don't let that top-line number fool you. When we slice the data to compare only poorer developing countries, that difference basically evaporates. It's 4.34% for dictatorships versus 4.28% for democracies, almost identical. So when you factor in all the other positive outcomes of living in a free society, that tiny historical economic gap in developing nations really isn't a solid argument against democracy.
However, overall economic growth is only half the story. This is where the grade really tanks: wealth inequality. You'd think it's totally reasonable to expect democracies to reduce economic disparities, right? I mean, the poor make up a massive proportion of voters. Yet when you look at the data from major democratic nations like South Africa and Brazil, the numbers are just staggering. The top 20% of the population is scooping up more than 60% of the national income, leaving the bottom 20% to just scrape by on less than 3%. It's undeniable that democracies often fail spectacularly at ensuring a just, equitable distribution of wealth and opportunity. Just let that sink in for a second. Imagine the entire world's wealth is a massive, delicious pizza. A minuscule fraction of the population, literally just 2%, gets to devour almost the whole thing, while half the global population is left fighting over one tiny paper-thin slice. Democratically elected governments just do not appear as keen to tackle severe poverty as logic says they should. Because of this, economics is definitely one of the lowest graded subjects on our report card today.
Okay, let's pivot away from economics and look at subject number 4, social diversity. Can democracy actually accommodate differences and foster harmony in divided societies? The answer here is broadly yes. Now, no society on Earth can fully, permanently resolve every single conflict between different groups. That's just human nature. But democracy is uniquely built to handle them, and it does so in 3 specific steps. First, it respects social differences rather than pretending they don't exist or violently suppressing them, which is exactly what non-democratic regimes tend to do. Second, democracies purposefully evolve mechanisms to let groups negotiate their conflicts through the political process. And third, by providing this structured competitive outlet, it prevents these deep societal tensions from boiling over into violence. So the ability to accommodate diversity, that is a massive plus point for democratic regimes.
We have finally arrived at our 5th and final subject on the report card: dignity and freedom, the heavy hitter.
Listen, if you take absolutely nothing else away from this explainer, let it be this one powerful concept. The passion for respect and freedom are the absolute basis of democracy. We've seen that the grades for economic equality and governmental speed are kind of a mixed bag. But when it comes to promoting the individual dignity of its citizens, democracy stands head and shoulders above any other alternative out there. Every single person inherently wants to be respected by their peers, and democracies worldwide recognize this core truth, at least in principle.
But actually, let's add a little nuance to this grade, because translating that beautiful principle of equality into daily reality, that is a relentless struggle. While equal respect is recognized globally in theory, it is achieved to vastly different degrees in practice. And this is especially tough for societies that have been built for centuries on systems of domination and subordination. You can't just flip a switch overnight and have everyone magically recognize that all individuals are truly equal. It means the work of democracy in this subject is never really finished. And that brings us to the very end of our report card. We've looked at the sluggish yet highly legitimate nature of democratic governance. We've seen its historical economic growth rates and, frankly, its frustrating failure to fix massive wealth inequality. We've also explored its superior ability to handle social diversity and its unyielding foundation in human dignity and freedom. So, I want to leave you with this to chew on. If you were the teacher issuing the final grade, weighing the incredible moral victories of human freedom against the highly practical flaws in economics and efficiency, what is your final verdict on democracy's performance? Thank you so much for exploring this data with me today. Keep learning, keep questioning everything, and I'll see you in the next explainer.